So welcome to Unit 12, Parallel Planning, and some additional planning aids that I'll talk about. Not all of them, but just a little bit, for Homeland Security Emergency Management 412 for this fall. Again, I'm David Kang, and I'll provide some of the context to this. And the background that you hear of the mama is my son, so you have to indulge me for a little bit. Yeah, we'll go through the contents. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the Army parallel planning methods, which I think is valuable to emergency planners, and a tool that you can use and a method to be used as you mature as an emergency planner, as well as the emergency operations template. So with that, we'll go right into the parallel planning concept. It's basically, parallel planning is essentially doing multiple tasks simultaneously. So what's the big deal, and what's the difference of multitasking? Well, in this case, parallel planning really means at different levels of echelons of government. So, for example, the state and the local planning simultaneously towards a common objective, or the federal and the state planning simultaneously towards a common objective. Parallel planning has its falls, advantages and disadvantages. And then if you're the lower echelon, usually it's a disadvantage, just because there's a lot of support that may not be received real well. For example, the concept is called leaning forward if you're the higher echelon. So, for example, FEMA has made it a FEMA, the federal government, has made it a directive that they'll be leaning forward or parallel planning outside of state requests. In other words, they're going to project resources towards a disaster before they're even asked for. And that's normally outside the system, but it does give them a more timely response. And some of the criticisms that was born out of Katrina of FEMA not getting there fast enough is the result of this parallel planning process. In the military, everything's nested, meaning that the echelons or higher echelons are all the type of planning is synchronized. Well, in state, federal, and local tiers of government response and emergency management planning, it's not as nested as strongly within DoD. However, parallel planning, if you can synchronize it, if there's pre-coordination, if your multi-agency groups are well versed in working together, parallel planning can be an advantage. But there are some pitfalls if it's not pre-planned and not properly executed. So read through the field manual, Army Field Manual 5.0, and go through there with that in mind. So just want to bring up additional things about parallel planning. It's also done when time is a constraint. That leaning forward that FEMA does, as I mentioned, if you pre-position and deploy before the resources is asked for, you eliminate some of the time constraints. And as I mentioned before, planning is done at the multiple level. And of course, the drawbacks are not only if it's not synchronized, it goes not as smooth, but you do need skilled planners. And if it's not synchronized properly, issues can arise. However, when it does work, boy, it's a beautiful thing. It's well orchestrated, because you're moving a lot of resources simultaneously to an incident to basically solve your objective. So that's the parallel planning in a concept. And the military does it very well, and it's something to think about as you progress as emergency manager. Now we'll talk a little bit about the Emergency Operation Planning Template as a tool. It's a resource that we've used. It's been mentioned throughout the multiple modules, but we'll take a little bit more in-depthly as in this unit. So one of the things that you'll be experienced with Emergency Operation Template is that it's e-based tool. and it can be used in remote Alaska. We've done it before. Having technology does have its faults, especially now in this stage where you need a lot of information in a conduit to provide that information exchange. But for this tool, we found that works in rural Alaska. We've tested it out in the chain, so it can work pretty much anywhere that's got a connection. It does use technology. The base technology that it is used very well, and we've seen it be synchronized different across different agencies throughout rural Alaska. So it's a tool that's been used. It's proven to be useful at the state, and we've actually written plans for them. However, it doesn't really replace the tool itself. Doesn't replace the emergency manager's ability to facilitate and go through the planning process. So keep that in mind as you go through looking at the tool and navigating around the tool. So and consider that a factor. As I mentioned before in the communications unit, technology is not going to solve your problem, but it's only going to enhance it. And keep that in mind. Look forward to your discussion questions, and if, as always, give me a shout if you have any questions.